So, first up is Jackson Schuster. Jackson Schuster says, "Found you guys for your Mortal Kombat give out, and honestly, sad I didn't find you earlier. I listened to you through CastBox. I don't know if you know, but you should check out their CastBox Originals promotion. Anyways, what do y'all think about the specs of PS5? Are you excited? What games are you excited for? Keep up the great work." Okay.
Listen, we don't.
Before y'all talk, specs equals Captain Canada.
Well,
Captain Canada,
I was going to say we don't
talk to us about specs.
No, listen, we don't have enough time.
The camera? That fucked me up.
There's nothing.
There we go. All right.
All right. Cool. There's nothing on the specs.
Well, we know the architecture, but
okay. What do we know?
So the main problem with PS4 and Xbox One is the CPU. It's really poor. It's a netbook CPU. AMD just didn't have a whole lot to compete with Intel at the time that they made PS4. So Ryzen, after getting their ass kicked for years by Intel, they came back with Ryzen. It's an excellent architecture. It doesn't perform quite as well at gaming as Intel, but it does everything else 10 times better. It's excellent at multitasking. It's a really good price point. It's a very good architecture, and it's a good architecture to build a console on because of how good it is at multitasking. And consoles now are being used for a lot more than gaming. Like they're streaming on them as well, right? So it's a very good architecture to build upon. The fact that they're using Zen 2, which would be the third generation of Zen processors, is promising. The fact that they're using Navi 20, also promising. The thing is, we don't know anything about the specs on what they're using. We don't know clock speeds. We know there's 8 cores, 16 threads. That's excellent. But there's just not enough to go on yet. We know it's using an SSD even in the base model. If there is more than one model, that's really promising. That also means it's going to be a bit more expensive. I still think it's probably going to be $499, but it's promising what they've put out. But look, when they're talking about stuff like ray tracing and 8K on a console, immediately first of all, if they're going for those, then you're looking at 30 FPS, and to me that's disappointing. But you have to be realistic about what a console is going to be able to do. If you were to look at what a 2080 Ti does for ray tracing, it's the performance drop when you enable ray tracing is staggering. So get 4K 60 ray tracing out of your head right away. It doesn't mean the console is going to be bad. I just think you have to have realistic expectation of what a console can do based on that price. And keep in mind, it has a much smaller form factor and much less power consumption than a PC. So I think that I still think 30 FPS is going to be the target for most of the new games. You know, if you're asking me today, I think they'll be able to run a lot of older stuff at a 4K 60, maybe 1800p 60. So like a lot of PS4 games, I'm sure. I still think it's going to be a 30 target for brand new stuff. So, you know, we need to hear a lot more on it, but the fact that they're using the newest Zen CPU is very promising. We don't know much about Navi either. We've heard rumors on it. They're supposed to be launching the consumer grade Navi cards at E3. So we should have a better understanding of what Navi can actually do. But right now, there's just too many unanswered variables to really give a good or bad impression on what the specs will be.
I think the main reason that they put out that article on Wired was this is mainly to say, here we're doing backwards compatibility. So Captain Canada, I love your assessment of the situation. and you are my go-to guy on technology. So, which is
terrifying.
I don't know.
Terrifying.
I don't know if that's good or terrifying.
It's terrifying.
But like when this stuff comes out, it's like I'm like, Matt, what does this mean?
What does this mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like the article that they put out when they talked about what you should expect from the PlayStation 5 on the wired.com article was all they really wanted to say for right now is it's backwards compatible and they're going to ship a solid state drive to cut back on load times. You know, because they did a comparison with like Spider-Man where it was like on the PS4 it went from 15 seconds down to like less than a second.
That's also a very the math there is a little fuzzy,
which I can understand.
You know, if that's on a dev kit or something, okay. If it's a highly specific loading time, okay. I don't think you're going to be seeing a 15-time improvement on loading times on everything. And that's the problem when they talk about stuff like that is consumers get misled. And they hear these numbers. They hear Microsoft talking about 6 teraflops as if that means something. It doesn't. And they allow their...
But it does. Man, it does.
They allow their expectations to go through the roof. And I don't like seeing consumers get misled. I really don't like that. I don't think it's fair for people who work hard for their money to buy something under the assumption that the company has been telling them the truth, right? And so for Cerny to talk about 8K and ray tracing, my opinion is kind of misleading currently.
Can you and I have an honest conversation? Like, I don't give a fuck about 8K. I don't care. I don't even care about 4K.
I don't really think the games are going to render in 8K. I just think it's the it's the HDMI output that is able to output 8K. Like I think aren't they using HDMI 2.1 or something? Which technically all devices using that can produce 8K.
It could be technically capable of outputting the menus at 8K, the same way that Xbox One outputs its menus at 144 hertz. It doesn't play any games at that refresh rate, even though Microsoft has been big advertised that it does support 144 hertz.
But see, putting its menus out at that, it's enough for them to say it supports it.
It is, right? But a lot of people don't research past that.
I mean, that's like winning by default or by technicality.
And you'll notice that CERN, you didn't talk about teraflops either.
Also,
well, no, because by the time they actually start talking about the box or the controller, they're going to come up with some new weird.
Well, teraflops is a real.
I'm not saying it's not real, but how many of us knew about teraflops before someone
on the console
teraflops?
Not a lot.
Exactly. That was not part of the lexicon before that. Even.
No.
The next Xbox is rumored to be stronger than the PS5.
It will be, but Xbox have 2. Xbox have like a cheaper entry point one, and then they'll have their ultimate box.
I mean, now has it been definitively proven that the current Xbox is stronger than the PS4?
The Xbox One X is.
The Xbox One X is more powerful than the Pro, yes.
Okay. So
they use the same CPU. All the consoles use the same CPU, different clock speeds. The X has a better GPU than the Pro. But here's the thing. It doesn't even always matter what the specs of the console are. Because that does not mean that the devs are going to cater to each individual console and specialize for them, or X is capable of doing a lot more than it does on some of its versions, but devs don't put anything out for it. So what's the point? It's hard to say, like on the console side, because it's not like, say you buy a new video card, you can the version that you're playing is unlocked, so you can go from 30 FPS to 300 or on some games, like depending on what you're playing. You're capable of taking advantage of the full capability of that video card. But on the console side, you're getting the version that the devs pick for you, right? So it's not just about what the specs on the console are. It's what devs do with that.
Okay. So I have a serious question for you, and just because I consider you a friend, Phillips. I know you're not Ars Technica, you're not Digital Foundry, you're not someone who gets. I know you're someone who likes to stay up on tech, like to stay up on tech, but you also recognize that there are people who know more than you.
Oh shit! Yeah, I'm just an enthusiast. This is just something I like.
Can X really give it to you?
DMX?
X.
No.
Okay.
Unless you're talking about the Resident Evil 2 mod, and then he absolutely can.
Okay, good. Yeah. Right. As long as we have that definitive, that is the Nerds Gone Rogue stance. As long as you're talking about Resident Evil, X can give it to you.
Yes.